Hey everyone, Cynics here, and there's just a few thoughts I wanted to share. I kind of wanted to just mention things on Twitter, but it's a little bit much for just a Twitter post. So I thought I'd just make a short video, hopefully short, just talking about a few things. Everyone's kind of frustrated. We're having a difficult time with everything. So, racism has been a huge problem in our society, very long time. I think it continues to be a huge problem. I find it very discouraging anytime people will talk about it like it's something in the past. And that's a huge just misunderstanding of how things work. No matter what, we're going to be dealing with a lot of the fallout from our history for, hundreds and hundreds of years. It's easy to say, we want to get rid of police brutality. It's a lot harder to actually figure out something actionable to do these things. So a couple thoughts that I wanted to talk about. Most importantly, economics, I think, are a huge factor in everything. Just as a historical note, racism is generally brought about as a scapegoat for a lot of the, either economic problems, just problems in general that a country might have. It's very easy for people to just find something to blame it on, like a race or a religion or anything, and just say, these are what's causing your problems. It deflects all of the problem, all the kind of issues away from anyone in power, from anyone that can actually, change things, and just deflects it onto someone that can't really defend themselves as much. So that's kind of the historical context for a lot of racism. So, one good way to help cut down on racism in general, just all kinds of bigotry and hatred, is to improve our economic situation just as a whole. It's worth understanding the basics of economics for this. So for one, capitalism, I don't have a huge problem with capitalism as a theory, but it is worth acknowledging that the end game of completely unfettered capitalism is one person owning everything. That's just the end game. If you follow the paths completely through to an eventual end, it ends with one person owning everything. That's the nature of capitalism. It's important to understand that. Depending on how much regulation and everything you put into it, you can slow that down. You can slowly kind of shift that around and delay it. But the end game will always be one person owning all the wealth. That's just, if I have an advantage at something, if I have more money than someone else, I can make more money than someone else. It takes money to make money, and the more you have, the easier it is to make it, and it's just a spiral of, basically easiness. I'm saying that as someone who, is at a point where I have enough money to make money, and, I've kind of slowly crossed over that little barrier. There are, the plus sides to capitalism as a whole, in that it potentially allows for a lot of good things. But the big thing that, all the corporations tell you is a bad thing, is actually a very important thing, is regulation. Regulation is key to everything. If you want a working capitalist society, you need strong regulations. Now, the main issue we have in this country right now is that our regulations are decided by people that are basically people with a lot of money and a lot of power are influencing the regulations at an incredible level. It's kind of disgusting. It's ridiculous. And because of that, we're shifting still toward that one person owning everything in game of capitalism. So it's not good. Anytime you check the numbers and you see that the smaller and smaller percentage of people are owning more and more of the wealth, that's how you know your capitalism is slowly going to implode on itself. Obviously, that situation, one person owning everything, will generally result in the end of society. So the end game of capitalism is a dark end game. It's just, that's it. That's just the fact of it. So we just have to slow it down as much as we can and create a lot of regulations to help kind of alleviate it. Having said that, once again, I still think capitalism is a good idea because it allows for a lot of just creative things. It allows people to pursue dreams, just kind of reach all kinds of goals. And in general, you need a little bit of a challenge in your life, and capitalism can sometimes provide that if it's fair. So that's where we get into regulations once again. So you might have noticed anywhere in life, even on things like YouTube, the more it's grown up, gotten bigger, the more power the people that already have power have over it. So now you get like content claims by big corporations. It's just slowly squishing down. And even YouTube is becoming a little bit more and more capitalistic and monopolized towards smaller groups having all the power. So the way to fix it, obviously, we can't just talk about problems without having ways to fix them. So the most important way to fix all this stuff is to have independent people deciding on the regulations based on the knowledge that they need to prolong capitalism for a longer time. It's very important that there are regulations that keep one person from controlling all the wealth. We do, for the record, most regulations are for that purpose. We have copyright laws, very important. For instance, in China, where they're super capitalist, but they actually are a little bit more free capitalist because they don't actually impose copyright laws that much. So that means that if I invent something, just anyone that has more money than me can take my idea and produce it for much cheaper than I could and just sell it for much cheaper than I could. That's a big problem in a lot of countries. If you don't give the person the rights to their own, creative properties, that's once again unfettered capitalism. The free hand of the market will just make it so the rich person can take any idea, make it cheaper, make it theirs, and there you go. They're going to make all the money. The person who actually had the idea, had the invention, had the property, gets nothing. Whether they're an artist, an inventor, creative engineer, just any type of thing. The person with more money has more power, they can take it. So we need, to make sure we keep regulations for small creators, small businesses, small kind of people that don't have a means to defend themselves. It's very, very important. Anyway, aside from that, one thing that will kind of, that seems like obvious stuff. Like the fact that we have lobbyists is insane because that's basically just saying, yeah, we'll allow you to kind of influence things with your money just a bit, as long as it doesn't get too crazy. And they're just slowly destroying our society. So we need to get rid of things like that, make the regulatory committees completely independent, pay them well. This is probably the most important job in society. Hire the most intelligent people in every sector and give them the goal of we need to prolong capitalism, make the most out of it for society, and treat those people well, because they will be the people that decide basically the future of everything. So aside from that, we need to eliminate one other major problem, and that is money hoarding. It's a huge issue. I play the stock market. A lot of people I know use, stocks, everything like that. If you know one thing about the stock market, or if you want to know one thing that's very important once you get into the stock market, you need to know that every time you make money on the stock market, someone else is losing that money. Now, it's always your hope that, I hope it was, some big hedge fund, that doesn't matter. But, sometimes you got to bear with the fact that you might be taking money from someone who has even less money than you. The reason I mention this is because it's worth noting that that's how all of money works in society. So every time there's a billionaire and going oh, look at me, I'm the youngest billionaire, I'm on a magazine or something. Great, good for you. You just made, 1 million people poor. It's kind of ridiculous that we would tout it as a great thing. Now, that's not to say we don't want people to be successful. We do, but there's a certain point where the number of stored money just becomes, more than you can even spend. Like Jeff Bezos makes, millions every minute or whatever. And that should be super, just entirely illegal. Money is supposed to be a representation of transaction. If you're not transacting it, then you are actively hurting society. So keep that in mind. I have one major rule I would like to impose based on that. I obviously I don't have any power, but if I had to make one big law happen, it would be the idea that hoarding a certain amount of money, I don't even know how much exactly, that would have to be decided by committee, but basically that should require a legal permit, otherwise it should be illegal. That's my concession. I think you should be able to get a permit if you're a major company and you're we have a justification for needing to hoard this amount of money because we want to invest in this thing at this time, so we might need it. Maybe you can get a permit for it. But just being able to hoard money, with no laws regarding it or whatever, it's ridiculous. That doesn't make any sense. that is destroying everything, that will not lead to anything good in the long run. It's not so much, there's not a problem with people making a lot of money. As long as they spend it, because then it's circulating, it gets passed down through people, the old Reaganomics slogan, trickle down stuff. The problem with trickle down economics is no one spends anything when they're rich. They just hoard money. And somehow we allow it to happen. We allow people to get paid more and more than they can even spend, and people at the bottom get paid less and less. And it's just kind of stupid and silly. Society is more than just, freedom and all of that stuff. There's important rules that need to be in place for it to function. No one questions when we have laws about like, hey, you need to respect other people's property. But for some reason, when it comes to laws regarding like, hey, you need to not do this thing that is counterproductive to everyone else, everyone's like, well, maybe. If it's not super obvious to them, they'll just say, hey, no, let's have freedom for everyone. And, it's just sad. So there's that. That's an issue. I'm talking a lot. I know I'm rambling. All right, I won't bother you too much with the economic stuff. Problem two is really about police. Police are a major issue. Just our whole police mentality is really it's trash, to be honest, in America. It has been for a long time. We give them way too much self-importance. And that sounds mean. For the record, my uncle was a chief of police. I have a lot of, friends and family members that have been involved in the police and everything. It doesn't change a thing, even though there's plenty of good people with good intentions who get into it. They are, in theory, and they should feel like it, they are our employees. We are paying for them to do things for us. That is what police are. It is a government-run system of paying someone to be an employee for the people to do the stuff that needs to be done for the betterment of society. They don't seem to think that. They don't have that mentality for the most part. They approach us and talk to us as if we're little children, little dumb babies that can't understand anything or know anything. They treat us with no trust or respect. And it's disgusting, to be honest. I have never had a good experience with a cop. I've had so many bad ones. I drove a crappy car for many years, very old, just piece of junk. And I would get pulled over randomly for no reason, no cause. And they would just get mildly harassed, especially, in the nighttime and whatever. Just because I look kind of like, artist, so I don't look like I'm healthily employed or anything like that. But damn, I'm like, just the most whitest, boringest person ever. And I still have to deal with that. I can only imagine how shitty it is for everyone else. No, it's disgusting. So I just, we got to do something major about it. It takes a major radical philosophical shift. For starters, most controversial thing I'll probably say in this little rant, but I don't think police should be carrying guns, just at all. A standard patrol officer has no reason to carry a gun. That's just a fact. Now, I do believe there should be a branch of the police that does carry weapons. We have a SWAT force and everything, and that can respond to situations that require it. But there's no reason for every just random guy walking around out there with badge to be carrying a gun. It's threatening. They often use them excessively. Even I've had guns like, they're always like this. They're always ready to pull a gun on you. It's ridiculous. I've seen guns pointed at people so many times, and it's like, what are you doing? Like, you're my employee. Imagine your employees showing up to work and like pointing a gun at you anytime I don't have any employees, but just imagine that mentality. How much like distorted someone's brain has to be to feel like they're, they can just lord power over you and do all these disgusting things when you're the one paying them. It's amazing. It's amazing to me. The mental gymnastics that most kind of police have in their heads when it comes to stuff like that. I know it sounds like I'm being a big old jerk to them. Like I said, there's plenty of police with good intentions, but it doesn't really matter. Who wants, like, you think about the people that want to be a police, it's all about power. It's about power dynamics, and them, kind of being able to feel like they're kind of have this higher sense of self-importance and justice. Even if it's well-intentioned, it's still this idea that they are the source of saving people. We are the saviors. We protect you. And it's just that self-important kind of vibe that they got going on. Cops need to stop carrying guns just in general. Just, it's stupid. Other countries do just fine with cops with no guns. It would create empathy for them. It would create respect for the job. If, obviously there will be issues if you have cops with no guns. A cop might get, shot or something someday. That would be terrible. But we would all agree that that was terrible. It would create a lot of respect and empathy for the job. It's a dangerous job. We would all kind of treat it that way. We would feel like they were our employees. We would feel like they were actually working for us. And it would be just create a different dynamic instead of this antagonistic situation that we have to deal with every day. So, whatever. No, I doubt that will change. Our country's too, backwards in its thinking to ever even consider it. What are we doing here? Are we just going to keep saying, talking nonsense and just saying, giving our thoughts and prayers and hoping things get better and let's just end racism and let's do all that stuff without actually having a method or path forward? Probably not. Now, any kind of change in society will take a long time, and that's just the state of things. But I think the question in general that you should be asking, like anyone who wants to get into politics, any politician, no matter who it is, whatever, Joe Biden, Donald Trump, the thing they should ask them in a debate is a very simple question. What is your 100-year plan for this country? That is the most important question you can ask a politician. Don't ask them what they're going to do when they get elected. Instead, ask them what their vision for 100 years is. That's the only way to know if they're actually going to be a decent, leader or not. Because that's where you can say, okay, well, if that's your goal, then you can start taking these steps. And that's what they'll do when they're in office. Take these steps to get here. You're not just going to change things overnight. Any president who's like, day one, I'm going to change everything. That's the stupidest thing you can say. That's disruptive. That causes all kinds of issues. You need to know what you're doing and you need to have a plan to get there. And it should be a vision of 100 years at least in the future. Most of, you take like Donald Trump's silly, like build a wall rhetoric and whatnot. And what is the 100-year plan for that? We're just going to be more and more secluded and shut off from the rest of the world. Like, what is the long-term plan for that? Obviously, that doesn't make sense. That's not a financially viable situation to maintain for 100 years. It's just, that's not how the world would work. So you need to ask people what their 100-year plan is. And then you can say, okay, well, here's the logical steps to get there. And you do things over time without doing anything incredibly drastic. And everything slowly shifts toward what you would like to see. But until you get stuff like that, it's just a giant waste. My hair's a quarantine mess. Anyway, sorry. I've just been rambling, thinking about stuff. I like to discuss solutions, theoretical solutions to society, because it's just more productive in my brain than simply saying like, all cops are bastards and all this stuff. Like, I feel that. That's like the emotion that will just spill out if someone just like pokes me and says, hey, what are you thinking? It'll be something toxic and pretty negative. But that's truly kind of the emotion that I feel inside. I'll just start tweeting out just, everything that I'm thinking and like, just being pissed off at every time I see someone say like all lives matter or something, just yell at them. Just doing stuff like that. But instead, I'd rather spend a little bit of time just trying to think of, what the long-term solutions might actually be and what the major problems are that are leading to our issues. How can we start shifting towards something? All the people who say all lives matter are still like really shitty people, but whatever. I think it's mostly ignorance for the most part. I don't think they understand, but who knows? Who cares? All right, so that's all I wanted to mention. So, feel free to share your own thoughts and ideas on the betterment of society. But the main thing, if I have to say anything, it's the rebranding, demilitarization of the police, a complete overhaul of the police, really, and just their mentality, their outlook, just everything. Just it's almost like at a point where we need to just dial it back so much and almost start over like from the early states and just being like, do we need them to have guns? Like, I don't think we do. This isn't the Wild West anymore. It feels like a relic. But start dealing with some of those issues. So there's that. Our major financial issues revolve around our horrible regulatory system, which is just disgustingly perverse. So regulations need to be adjusted. Hoarding of wealth needs to be heavily adjusted because that is literally just destroying everything. And we got just a bunch of other minor issues to deal with. So whatever. We'll see. We'll see if we can solve nothing because we have no power. But there might come a time where influence our ideas passed along, influence people. Maybe it'll make a difference eventually. You can't fight the logic forever, and the logic and the facts are that unfettered capitalism has an end game that results in the destruction of society. There's no other way around it. It'll be pretty good for a long amount of time, and then it'll eventually collapse. That's just what will happen. And we're kind of reaching those tipping points. It's just only going to get worse, to be honest. 2020 is shit, and things are only getting shittier and shittier for the economics of our society. Every time there's an economic collapse, the rich will get richer, the poor will get poorer, and it'll just get worse and worse until we actually do something very drastic. So it's reaching that point. Sad, but that's kind of where we're at. Um, you know, I was finally getting my shit together, I'm like a property owner, have some things going on, feel like I'm pretty good, but even I know that this is not a sustainable society. Okay, whatever. My opinions don't mean anything in the long run, but hopefully you enjoyed discussing them in a one-sided way, whatever. Care about you all, love you all, have a good rest of your week. Stay safe, everyone. Stay productive, stay a creator and not a consumer, and do your best to always be using your brain and thinking about stuff. All right, I'll see you guys.